Out of the blue, Awaken Realms says the quiet part out loud. This is going to be a very fun video where I get to read through Awaken Realms, tell you exactly how it is, how we all know it is, but how most people don't say it when it comes to running a business and selling games, especially crowdfunded games. We're talking stretch goals, we're talking add-ons. It's going to be good. All right, so I've only read through this once, and then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna make a video and then just read through it and comment on it, because I have some opinions, and it looks like Awaken Realms does too, and I'm all for it. This is gonna be a fun video for me to film, at least. I hope it's enjoyable for you as well. Let me know your thoughts on these. They break it down in some really good questions like, why are you doing this? Or what about this? Or why can't you do this? And so it's great. We're gonna talk about value of games, we're talking about add-ons, stretch goals, like I said, it's gonna be a good one. So let's go ahead and dive in. And like I said, I'd love to hear your comments on this as well. Okay, so what they start out this because they're trying to do their last add-on for Nemesis Retaliation, which, by the way, they don't. This is one problem that I think GameFound needs to fix that Kickstarter has, is they always have the header. So I'm gonna have to actually go back here to show you real quick. There we go. They're at 7.5 million, doing great. Still 5 days left to go. 27,500 backers. They're doing well. Okay, so regardless of what's said here, they're doing well. But there is some interesting points here that I don't think they go fully into enough. So I'm going to add some information there for you guys as well. But yeah, super excited for this. And it's great that a lot of people are happy. It's good to have a good campaign. But is it a good campaign? There are still complainers. Let's address them first. Let us start today's update. That's how they're starting it. By reacting to some comments after the last update and the small character add-on we have added. First of all, it's great to even show that you're reading the comments enough to actually get the top-down people, the people in charge of actually making sure, hey, this is how our communication is going to go with our company, especially during our campaign. That's awesome. I love that. While we feel a lot of you have enjoyed what our team has prepared, there is also a big group of people. Now, this is something I disagree with already, right? You have almost 28,000 people backing your game. It's going to be a select few loud people. Okay, that's not a big group at all. The internet makes things seem big, but in the grand scheme of things, it's very, very small. So don't worry about that. Okay, the negativity stands out to us. It does as a human species. It's how we operate. It's how we've come as a species as far as we have, is by focusing on the negative and worrying about that and wanting to fix it, and I get it, okay? However, not a big group, so I'm disagreeing already right there, but this will be good, who are very critical of it. We want to give you a full, transparent explanation so that hopefully you can better understand our reasoning. Fantastic. I love addressing the issue head on. Don't beat around the bush. Don't give us a whole bunch of marketing speak. Well, they might a little bit in the future, but I really dig it. So it's a kind of a Q&A. What are add-ons? Why are add-ons not added for free as stretch goals, right? Now, because the budget is limited and we have a margin that we need to operate within, there is a big graveyard of campaigns that overpromised and then never delivered. We have always delivered our games and never asked for extra funds, even during the biggest shipping crises. Now, I want to pause right there and respond to both things. So first of all, yes, definitely. I've been talking about this recently with SFG, with a few others around not backing for a deal. If you're looking for the best deal possible, you're looking to get scammed, you're looking to get frustrated with no delivery, you're looking for a company that won't be able to sustain itself, at least not in the current market, generally speaking. Okay, if you're always going for the cheap, the most bang for your buck, that's the lowest denominator, right? Is people doing that kind of stuff. They'll give you a great deal, but the deal ends up with you without a game for years or having to pay extra shipping or whatever. We need to start focusing on good deals that are safe and prioritize the safety of our pledges more than the absolute bare minimum. And at the end of the day, I think we all want these companies that are making games that interest us enough to where we want to back to be successful, to be able to make another game even better than the last one, so you can be super excited about that one as well. And that means a successful business making money. Okay, so it's this weird quasi thing where I think sometimes game developers are kind of like YouTubers, and that a lot of people feel like you should never get paid for the work you put into it, right? You're making board games. Just make a board game and then that's it. You should never get rich off of it. You should never make a good money. Like the moment they hear you being super successful, they think you're overcharging. We don't do that with all companies, but whenever you get, I think, a niche industry like this that's focused on people, not necessarily just an abstract company, right? Whenever you view Awaken Realms as Marston and Company, it changes your perspective, I think. And I think there is a subsection of people who do believe that. They should not be making a lot of money on this, even though they're making games that you love. Now, the other part here is never ask for extra funds. I think, well, true. I think it's because Awaken Realms, and I said this, I want to say like years ago. It was during like the whole COVID crisis, right? When like Ludus Mana Studio was the first one to ask for extra funds. One of the things I commented on, even at that time, was how other companies are getting extra funds without telling you. And Awaken Realms was one of the first ones I feel to do this when they really started adding a whole lot of add-ons post-campaign into the pledge manager, all those like resin kits and stuff like that, and different cat expansions and all that. So during the pledge manager, they haven't delivered it yet. Suddenly there's an extra add-on, and people like it and they back it, and that brings in the extra cash flow needed. I firmly believe that is the goal of that. I think that's why they started pushing that so much. And I think it's a great way to do it, right? There's a lot of other companies that put an update on and tell you about how they have an issue and how you can support them to be able to deliver the game by getting that. And that causes a lot of division. And I think what Awaken Realms did is does not say anything and then just drop add-ons and then, hey, we're not launching another campaign, but if you want a big resin mini or something like that, or you like cats, you can get this extra thing in the add-on, and now suddenly people are upping their pledge. We got more money and we can do that. So I think that is a big thing that they did. So I think they're being a little tongue-in-cheek there. They didn't ask for extra funds, but it's because they got extra funding. My opinion on that, at least early on during the really tough part of COVID. We also want to provide you with the best quality, and we believe we are quite good at calculating that. We believe that the current offering of Nemesis Retaliation has some fantastic value, with around 175 USD savings, and our team worked really hard to make that happen. This is kind of a big thing there. I mean, there are people putting a ton of hours into this, really working hard at their jobs to make something that interests you. At the end of the day, I think they should get paid. So I understand that. What this didn't address, sadly, is the difference between an add-on and a stretch goal and how you figure that out, right? And there's a lot to that, and everybody's gonna like value it differently. They didn't really explain how they decide add-on versus stretch goal, but either way, it's still pretty good. This is a great one. But this campaign funded over $6 million. That's true, but unfortunately, the economy of scale for production will get you only to some point after 10,000 copies. Any gains for increasing quality are quite marginal. That's for a couple things. First of all, for miniatures, they typically use steel molds, and steel molds, like all of the metals and all the choices you can have for the molds, has a lifespan, right? You saw that with a damaged one with the soldier and the original Nemesis, right? Where it got bad and they had to replace it, and that costs money. And typically, a lot of them are marketed at 10,000 copies. So often, once you reach that, you now have a second mold. Like it just, after a while, the scale just resets, right? It kind of maxes out. Additionally, stuff like cardboard specifically and cardstock, all the paper material, doesn't scale like miniatures do. With miniatures, it's a high cost to get the mold, but then each individual miniature from that mold is very cheap, right? So it kind of like, the more you print off that mold, the cheaper it technically gets. Cardboard doesn't really work that way. At some point, you're just paying that price, and that's just kind of what you pay, right? Regardless of if it's X or Y, right? So that's kind of what they mean. I think the 10,000 copies is pretty accurate there. I think that's really good information. Essentially, after that, it's not like your margin gets cheaper and cheaper, or more and more and more, because it becomes cheaper for you to make. There is this kind of hard limit on how much this costs. So yes, the campaign is a wild success, and we're extremely happy with your support. But with this money, we need to produce everything, ship, pay taxes, pay our crew, and cover many other costs. Exactly, right? The problem with this, and I'm going to actually click this because I want to go back to it, but people and companies have done this too, and it's got them in a pickle. They focus on the public number here, right? This public number. You'll see YouTubers do this with subscribers versus views, right? They're so focused on getting that subscriber count high, even if the views don't follow it, it doesn't matter. They are focused on that public number, and they'll sacrifice views to get it. Right? It's very common with this public number thing. The same thing happens here with board game devs, where a lot of them will focus on that, or a lot of customers will, because they don't know the intricacies. They're not really thinking about it, right? You're not making the game, you're just buying a game. Where you see this, you're like, wow, that's a ton of money. But the problem is that's revenue, not profit. They still have to make the game out of that. Right? If you're looking at that and you're thinking, look how profitable we were, that's a big difference. You can, and I've seen this happen before. I've actually talked to devs about this, where the big miniature game that funded a lot made zero profit. And then the smaller game that was way less in scope and didn't fund nearly as much actually made profit. In other words, it was more profitable to do that than to get the big number of revenue because the game was so expensive to make. This happens all the time, especially with miniature games. It's very important to keep that cost down, because just because the revenue is so big doesn't mean the profit's actually there. That's what they're talking about, the margin, and that's kind of what they're talking about here. You might see 7.5 million, but they're seeing a set amount of profit percentage of that, which isn't nearly as much, right? So while it's still good, it sounds like they're doing great and they got that under control, it doesn't necessarily do that, especially when you combine that with the 10,000 copies there. Okay, this is great. But why are you deceptive and not showing all of the add-ons at the start? Now, this is a common tactic that companies do, especially for long campaigns like Nemesis Retaliation, right? Come On, I think, really started this, but I think it's been adopted pretty much industry-wide for a lot of these things, where essentially you start with a very simple pledge. Now, that does one of two things. First of all, it has a low barrier of entry. You don't have sticker shock price, right? All of that's kind of resolved. Additionally, it makes it super easy for the consumer. You don't have a bajillion different things. Oh, I don't want that. I have to learn all these add-ons day one and stuff. You have a very simple campaign focused just on your game number one, and everybody pledges for that single pledge and you're good to go. It's very easy for the consumer, both the scale of learning the new system, the new game on offer, whether or not you want it or not, and navigating the pledge levels, because there's really only one, right? That's actually really good and beneficial. I think it's great that you can focus on just the game and not all the pizzazz around it, right? But then you actually have to have stretch goals often. This is where Come On does it. And they're based off that revenue, right? How much money are you bringing in? Sometimes they'll do it by backer count or something like that. But either way, that it's normally the financial things, and that needs to increase. Now, the majority, and you'll see this on like K-Track and stuff, will pledge the first 2 days, and then there's barely anything. And then the last 2 days, you'll get more backers. But in the middle there, you're not really gaining new people to buy your game, because they either already know about it or they're waiting to see. Right. And so, and in fact, if you have a high middle, it means you didn't do good advertising in the beginning. They should have known earlier. Right. That means there's an untapped market that you didn't get until later. Right. So obviously something you didn't have good coverage, or you didn't get good reviews, or you didn't tell the right media, or whatever it is. Right. So ideally, you have already all the people. So now you need to get more money from those people. Right? To unlock the next stretch goal, to have interest, to make it look successful, you have to make the people that are currently there pay you more. And that's where the slow add-on reveal comes from, right? That's really the driving force of that, is to make the funding keep going up in that lull, in that middle. It's why a lot of times we've seen a lot more campaigns that don't have that just have all the add-ons right up front, and they're much shorter campaigns, typically like 2 weeks or less, right? Like really short campaigns that they zip through, because otherwise that lull looks really bad, because you're not unlocking anything, you're not gaining anything, or they'll do daily unlocks, right? But if you do any financial unlocks, typically you have those slow add-ons. But again, it also helps reduce the sticker price, right? If you're constantly increasing the price by $45, then that's a lot less than asking for 600 day one, right? Yes, for 600 day one, people are just going to zip out there. If you started at 150 and then it's 200, then it's 250, then you eventually get up to about 325 and you're like, yeah, I don't know. But then the all-in comes in, you get this big expansion plus a discount and it's only 400. Suddenly you're at $400 where you wouldn't have gone day one into that, especially not knowing everything, right? It's how MMOs work. It's how any long-standing service works, where you're slowly added value but also cost, right? It's a very common tactic. So that's kind of what that's asking for. There are multiple reasons for that, with deception not being part of it at all. Whether intentional or not, it does kind of hide information, right? I wouldn't know. I mean, we're getting into semantics on whether or not that's deception, but you are purposely avoiding the final cost of things, right? You're purposely not letting people know that for whatever reason it might be. So I think deception is a negative connotation for that. So I'm fine with them not using that word. But I mean, at the end of the day, you are for sure not telling people the whole story about what your plans are, right? For us, it is normal campaign dynamic. With some add-ons, we have no idea if we will be able to make them happen. For example, if the campaign had less support, some add-ons would not be economically feasible. Now, while this is true, it's only partially true. And here's my issue with that. There's a few things. Number one, in other words, I think they're kind of giving you a little bit of a red herring here, where they're like, look, this is a problem. And while true, that's not a problem relating to Nemesis Retaliation. This is the third game and one of the biggest successes in board gaming in quite some time in the crowdfunding space, at retail, all of that. It's very easy to know that this was going to be a success. Between the interest beforehand, between comments, between people signing up, between all of your business data leading up to this, and all their data from all the rest of the crowdfunding through GameFound, it's very easy to know that this was pretty much a slam dunk case, right? There was very little chance of this failing or even doing poorly. I recently talked with SFG about this, and one of the things they said is that, especially with all the data that they have and the IP stuff like that, they can kind of make a conservative guess but it is conservative. Like for Resident Evil, he mentioned Resident Evil, right? They've done now like 4 of them, right? Or 3 of them or whatever. So they've done quite a few of these. And as long as they are conservative in their estimates, you can still estimate a certain amount of success. And as a business, you kind of have to do that. It's how you get your pricing, right? You have to price based off of assumptions and stuff like that. The other part here around the add-ons or not being like that is you have to have a business plan. If you don't have a business plan on like what you're planning to sell and offer, even if there's like risks and factors, right? I don't care if you fill out a raid log with it or whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? The point is that you already have some risk assessment there, and all of that is baked into the prices. Profit from a company doesn't mean that every single item has to make a profit, right? It means that you make your profit out of a whole based off estimated backers, right? That's how that works. For instance, a lot of times the core box doesn't make a lot of money, but they make their money in those paid add-on expansions, and they know that. It's why the core is priced as it is. If you weren't sure if you were ever going to do those add-ons, you would price the core differently. So you had to make a decision. There's no business that I feel is as successful as AR that isn't looking at that and making projections and estimates. I mean, that's how that works, right? It's how you get to the price you have. When they say estimated at this price, it's because they understand their whole picture, how much profit they plan on making on dice, at least estimated, right? Conservatively, safely, right? With a buffer, how much they're going to get on character add-ons, how much they're going to do this, how much are total can they even bring into the company? Do they have to bring in more to that? Are they expecting to build more? Do they have to start building up infrastructure for that or play testing or whatever it is? There's so much involved in this. There's no way they just had like no clue. They're like, I don't know, we just kind of threw stuff up there. It's kind of how they make it sound, and I feel that is a little disingenuous. I feel like that's look over here and don't think about it too hard, right? I know that they're not trying to say, yeah, we're just kind of idiots at this. Like they're not. They're super smart, right? And they know exactly what they're doing. Additionally, we are actively monitoring your comments, looking for what you guys would like to have more, and working on it during the campaign. We cultivate and love this typical dynamic going back and forth with the community and including your ideas and designs. Again, this is another thing where you're when it comes to manufacturing stuff like that, just because you don't know if it's this alien or this alien, it's like offering a 3-year-old to dress themselves. If you just tell a 3-year-old to dress themselves, they're going to come out wearing nothing but a scarf and a diaper or something weird like that, right? Like they're going to look like some like cross-dressing, like cosplay kind of crazy person, right? Their shirts on backwards and they're wearing a hat or, God knows what, right? So you don't do that. Instead, you're like, I'm good with this and I'm good with this. Which one do you want? So either way, you're good with it and you're in complete control of what those offerings are. You just don't know which one they're going to pick. Are they going to pick pink or are they going to pick orange, right? Whatever the case is like that. So that's really what they were looking at there. So they could definitely still kind of do that. Yes, you're creating the game, but again, this is kind of a red herring thing. I think they're really avoiding this question. I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, it's fine just to say that what it is, right? You're not showing all the add-ons so you can keep increasing the price and so that people don't get sticker shock and so that you're introducing information slowly to people so they're not bombarded with all of it all at once. And because there's still a few unknowns like the cost of these, because if the campaign's doing a certain amount or they're backing a certain amount, they might raise or lower the cost or charging you dynamically. And they're able to do that if they're able to react differently to that. That's really the dynamic part of that, is because once they announce that, it's there, right? So if they're selling that for $45, it's $45. But if they're not getting the profit margin that they think they're getting, or there's not a lot of buy-in to the add-ons previously, they can change that. Oh, now it's $55, so that the profit margin's larger than that, and they have a good business. It's not a bad thing to do. It's a smart thing to do when you have crowdfunding, when you have the data available, and you can slowly see how people in real time are backing your things and wanting your things. That's super awesome, and it's great that they have that tool. But just come out and say it. Don't pretend that picking Alien 1 versus Alien 2 means you can't tell us that there's going to be an Alien expansion. That's just kind of silly. It's determining the price. Is it just a cash grab? Love this one. This is so great. They answered so well. Well, this is a weird definition for us. I don't know if it's weird. I think there's a loss of subtlety there, or nuance in that statement. This is like what I would have said like pre-COVID, right? Back in those days, right? Obviously I'm a little bit more well-worded now, hopefully. But this is something that I would have totally said, like 2019. Essentially, companies are here to make money, right? Like that's their business. So yes, they're making this to make money. If you want to word it that way. Our business is making and selling games. We always try to make a very creative and good expansions, and we spend quite a lot of time, effort, and resources on them. And all of that costs money. In the end, if you feel they are not priced well or not good enough, there is absolutely no need to purchase them. Or any board game. Believe it or not, you can live without them. We are making a lot of effort to make the base game as affordable as possible. Again, so you're pricing the add-ons to make sure that that core game is available as cheap as possible for that entry level. In this campaign, we even made a non-miniature version to ensure people can get it as cheaply as possible. As we always highlight very strongly, add-ons are absolutely not necessary to have a great gameplay experience. They are expansions and additions that will change the game or offer more variety. We also try to price our gameplay add-ons very reasonably. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if you want to word it this way, don't think of the top people, think of the actual workers there. Ideally, if you love the art of Awaken Realms, then you want those artists to be well rewarded for their talent, their skill, and their effort into this game. And that means paying them really good wages, right? And it's awesome that we can pay our artists, our sculptors, our designers, even playtesters good wages in this industry that traditionally doesn't make a lot of profit, a lot of money. It's definitely not the place you go to get rich quick, right? It's game development. It's not how that works. But anyway, so like ideally you want the actual workers to have a good wage. That's directly from the profits of the game. Hopefully they're making good profits, right? So like I get that, but that's just kind of funny. Is this a cash grab? I think the problem here is when they see cash grab, they're thinking make money. And when people are saying cash grab, what they mean is trying to eke out as much money from the Nemesis IP as possible. In other words, doing bare minimum or extreme measures to gain more money. I think that's why people use the term cash grab, not just simply make money. They're answering with make money, but I think really the thing there is, are you really just trying to get as much out of us as possible? I think a better response of this would have been talking about the cost of things and why prices are rising necessarily, and why maybe you decided on so many add-ons, you had so many good ideas, you want to offer them if they're available, but you don't feel obligated to do it. Like something like that I think would have been a better response than, yeah, we're here to make money, because I don't think that's the question here. There are no new stretch goals. Well, this time at the start of the campaign, we announced that we will be getting extra and full value offering. There is a whole new alien race, 50 plus models, 2 new characters, a special insider expansion, and a few other extras that we have thrown in, like the special burst die or more equipment. We feel like we were very transparent about it from the beginning. Still, we take into account that we could work better on the presentation of that idea. Honestly, I'm not sure that's necessarily an issue. I think the issue is this weird balance that we have, right? And I've talked about this around how we want to be part of a resounding success, not something that barely eked by, even though they both may have funded, right? I talk about this with the how much money you need to raise to actually make the game, right? The funding goal. But it kind of goes hand in hand with stretch goals and stuff like that, right? You have to balance offering enough day one to have people excited about the game and feel like it's enough value, while adding more value throughout it, because otherwise people, if all you did was introduce add-on, you can buy this, you buy that. Imagine, or remember back when it was kind of popular to do stretch goal add-ons, like, hey, if we make it this much, we'll sell you this. That was a thing people did for a while on crowdfunding, and people hated it. I don't know anybody who loved that idea, except perhaps the businesses, right? And it kind of goes hand in hand with that, right? Like you want to feel like you're getting an even better deal. And if you feel like the deal is getting worse because you're getting less of what's available because of the add-ons, even like mentally, this is a mental thing. This is like human conditioning here, right? Very hard to manage. I don't know if there's a right answer to any of that. I think it's different for each game, for each group of backers. It's hard, right? I get that. I think that's the issue there, though. I think it's, if people just say add-on, all they see is it getting more expensive and they have less and less of the picture. Even though nothing changed for them, they know that there's more out there now that they're not getting without paying. And so if you're not combining that with giving them value, it can feel that way. I think it really can. And again, I think that's just us being weird human beings and how our brains work, right? Original Nemesis had more stretch goals. This is a great thing they bring up. We must start by saying the original Nemesis was crowdfunding at very different times. 100%. Look, this was back when people would only back a game if it got to $1 or less per mini. That was a legit thing people did back then. They'd be like, oh, it's at 80 cents a mini? I know, I'm only getting this for 50 cents a mini, right? And then we had stuff like Blacklist games like Fantasy Series line that had issues and all this. Suddenly people were just doing mini campaigns and then failing because suddenly the prices got more expensive and stuff like that. But that was a legit thing. Back at that time, we were looking for screaming deals and we got them. It was insane. The Wild West, it doesn't work that way anymore. Prices have changed drastically worldwide, but this is also like comparing apples and oranges. The new stretch goal race and retaliation provides more content than the new race and OG Nemesis. That actually doesn't matter. This is something I do disagree with. You do not price a product based off the amount of effort you put into it. The amount of effort you put into it should determine how much of it you sell. In other words, how good of a thing it is, how desirable it is. The price is based off pretty much just manufacturing plus profit margin, right? That's literally it. It doesn't matter if you've spent 3 years making this game or 1 year making this game. As long as the game is good enough to sell, hopefully anytime you put into it helps it sell more, and the quantity is what changes, not the price. If we were to pay 3 years worth of some guy developing in a game, these games would be so expensive nobody would buy them. It doesn't work that way. It works based off scale and having more people be interested in it than the effort put into it. Now, there are operational costs for a company. I'm talking like an indie, one guy developing it. When it comes to paying artists and paying designers and stuff like that, there is a cost there. But again, that is not the cost of manufacturing and typically not really put into the cost of an item. So the price and what they're giving to you really has nothing to do with the necessarily the content, but manufacturing costs. I say that because sometimes they'll be like, oh, we added these 2 cards and they add all this content to the game, different modes of play or something like that. But no, you're adding 2 cards. The price shouldn't increase too much just from those 2 cards. Ideally, the amount of effort and the coolness of what those cards do have you sell more. Anyway, we just want to leave our 4 cents. I don't know why it's 4 cents. I typically downgrade myself. I'm like a half a cent, and provide you with this explanation. We do not mind feedback or criticism, but we also ask for it to be respectful. Please remember that there are a bunch of people who work super hard on making this game, and those expansions happen. Very true. Again, the human implement there, I think, is key. Just when it comes to expressing yourself, when it comes to talking about stuff, it's fine to talk about business. It's fine to talk about how you're running your business. It's fine to critique things. It's fine to agree with things and disagree and add context. That's what I just did here. But you don't need to insult. And I feel like even the cash grab stuff, that has such a negative connotation to it that I feel like it's kind of insulting, right? Like if you made this thing or you put a lot of effort to it and they're like, are you just here for a cat? Are you just trying to screw me over? It's kind of insulting, right? It's insulting your integrity, right? So I can understand even that being kind of iffy on them. I've not read the comments to know what people were specifically saying that drew this level of response, but I love the fact that they did it. I really did. It's fantastic for a company to be a little bit more real for us. I don't agree with everything they said. I think I have a little bit of inclination on some things, a little bit of opinion on some other things, of course. But overall, I think it's a great update. I think it's fantastic that they said this. I really do. And I think they said it in a quite good way as well. There was one more thing I want to point out just because I think it's funny and I want to definitely point it out because it's something I noticed and maybe I'm weird. Let me know if I'm weird for this or not. But it looks to me like this guy's wearing Whitey Tighties. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Whether it's about Whitey Tighties or about the actual video I just made, I would love to hear your opinion on this, especially when it comes to board game developers making money, hopefully good money, or maybe not hopefully good money, and what you think about a safe back versus a screaming good deal. Let me know in the comments below. And as always, a huge shout out to my patrons and YouTube members for making this channel possible. Thank you so much for your support. If you'd like to learn more, there are links down in the description below. Thank you so much. And with that, have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.